And he's like, well, do you think we can do that? I'm like, I'll leave in an hour. So working on McLarens, you end up meeting a lot of people, and one such person is Tavarish, Freddie Hernandez. I knew who he was. I'm friends with Ed, so I'm pretty aware of who Freddie was, and heard that he had got a McLaren that he was rebuilding, and he rebuilt that over time. Beautiful 675 LT. I reached out to Ed. I said, look, if Freddie ever needs anything, give him my number. Well, that day did come, because I don't know if you saw, but yeah, he ended up scattering the motor all over the road at one point. So as soon as I saw that, I reached out. I'm like, Ed, I think Freddie's probably going to want to talk to me. Sure enough, he did. So me and Freddie started talking about different plans for things, and nothing really ever came of it over that summer. If you follow Freddie, you know that he's got plenty of projects to keep him busy. One day in late July, I got a phone call. He's like, hey, we were talking about building this engine. He's like, I just got an invitation to be on Jay Leno's garage show, but it's in 16 days. Like, do you think you could rebuild an engine and send it down to me? And do you think I'd have enough time to put it together? I'm like, Freddie, no, like, that's impossible. I'm like, literally, the only way this is going to happen is if I leave now from Chicago, come to Orlando, pick up the car, and we just start wrenching on this thing. Like, and even then, like, I don't know. If we have to be in California in 16 days and rebuild this engine, like, that's pretty crazy. And he's like, well, do you think we can do that? I'm like, I'll leave in an hour. So I picked up my buddy Stan, and we deadheaded down to Orlando, picked up this car. We had it back by Sunday morning on the lift for Freddie to come in to kind of help out, because we need all the help we can get to get this thing done in a week. And that's when I handed it over to Ivan, the head of Cannonball Special Operations, to see what he could do.
So Arnie approached me and said, hey, I've got this deal with Tavarish. I'd heard of Tavarish before. I'm not into meeting Freddie for the first time. I didn't know what to expect. I'm a mechanic, as all mechanics know. You do your thing your way, and it's like, oh, great, now I'm going to get stuck for a week working with somebody that's going to be messing up my program. But I met Freddie, super nice guy. Over the course of, seriously, the first day, it was amazing. We worked so well together. He is such a genuine, nice guy, understanding, smart, great mechanic. I mean, we had a blast. It was phenomenal. I had so much fun that week, even though I did put in a lot of hours. Basically, we yanked that motor out as quick as we could, started tearing it down, kind of taught him a little bit of stuff about McLarens as we were going along. We got it completely out, figured out what we were going to need to do. I mean, obviously, with a rod through the block, that thing wasn't going back together. We talked about a few different routes. We had a decent amount of spare parts at the time. So the call was made to, hey, let's make this into a 4-liter. We'll go from 3.8 to a 4-liter, a little bit more cubes, faster spool. It should be pretty decent. So we went down that route. We grabbed a 4-liter block, 4-liter crank. I think we used his heads. Those were savable. We basically kind of Frankensteined this motor back together and got it all ready to go, where, you can watch the videos and kind of see where we were at on that. We get it to the point where we're going to marry the transmission to the engine, and we ran into some issues. There's a very small difference between the 4-liter block and the 3.8-liter block that we discovered when it comes to the starter. They changed the driveline damper over time. It's got a little bit thicker, so the transmission needed to go back a little bit, and the starter ends up a little bit further back, so they moved the ring gear back. So suddenly it didn't work, and we were like, what do we do? Where do we go from here? We ended up borrowing some other components that we had laying around, put a different, call it a bell housing, but it's not really, but it's the front case of the transmission. We put that on there, ran a 720 damper, and got this thing back together in a week. Basically, we went from parts out the bottom to a running car on the dyno tune, ready to rock and roll in 1 week. The engine failed probably because it was overpowered. I mean, to put it simply, this was fairly early on in the learning of McLarens. The torque limit that we were trying to figure out at the time started out pretty high, and we started to bring that down over time as we were weeding out weak links. So one of the things that we found out was Early models, 12C, 650, even the P1 could have had one of 3 different rods. There was an early rod. It was designed and it was a very thin beam. They did a supplier change. So they went to a new supplier, same design, very thin beam, and then eventually they made a lighter weight rod, but it had a wider beam, so it kind of spread the load out a little bit. Freddie's motor had the heavier but thinner beam, and he bent or broke every single rod in that engine. Like every one of them was either shorter or bent or tweaked or split in half or hanging outside the block. I mean, that thing scattered really good. This had a tune on it. It had big turbos on it. I mean, there was a lot going on, a lot of power, a lot of torque. It just exceeded that and gave up the ghost. Getting the car to the point where we could actually put it on the dyno, this was all mechanical stuff. I mean, this is what I'm good at. It's what Freddie's good at. It was just a lot of time. Basically, we were compressing a month's worth of work into 1 week. So we got everything together. Freddie was a little bit worried. I had a few of these builds under my belt at that point. I wasn't terribly worried, but we got everything together. Freddie was filming the first startup, and I got inside and pressed the brake, hit that button, and the thing literally was just purred. There was no drama whatsoever. Even Freddie was like, what the heck? It wasn't a loud scream or long crank. It turned over like 2 times and bam, it fired right up. And we're like, wow, this is awesome. This is amazing. And it's pretty crazy because that's pretty much how McLaren builds go these days. We use a lot of assembly lube and stuff like that. The initial start, you get a big puff of smoke and, you're like, oh, all that smoke. We're used to it now, So it's to the point where these things just fire up and they work. So we're pretty happy with the way things go. Freddie was super happy, got the thing started up, thermal cycled it a few times, and it was ready for the dyno. So we got the car on the dyno. These were turbos that we were unfamiliar with. Honestly, I think Freddie was unfamiliar with the turbos too. I mean, they just kind of brought a turbo together that was bigger than what he started with. 675s, all the 3.8 liter cars, they have smaller turbos to begin with, frame size. You get up into the 720 and the Senna 765. These are larger frame turbos. So if you do modify these turbos, the bigger turbos, you get a bigger net turbo in the end. Freddie started with a smaller turbo, ended up with a smaller turbo. We weren't sure what we were expecting. I mean, he wanted a lot of horsepower. We were kind of counting on it being a 4-liter, making some more power. We were slightly disappointed. I mean, these turbos just kind of ran out of air. The car ended up making 675 horsepower, 675 torque. That's all we could squeeze out of it. We were limited also by octane. So as you make more power, you need more and more octane. We weren't trying for hero numbers on race gas or, throwing E85 in there or anything. Overall, yes, the numbers were a little bit disappointing. However, taking the car out for a drive, that thing rips. 675 pounds of torque, small, lightweight car. It was funny, Freddie didn't even drive the car until he was with Jay. It was like into the trailer and off to California like right afterwards. So it was me and Alex. We actually went out on the test drive and ripped the car around and did some logs on the street, made sure everything was okay, and that's how it ended up. It was cool. Freddie actually contacted us recently and said, hey, listen, I'd like to make some more power. I'm thinking about, putting different turbos on there or whatever. What can we do? So we're in the planning stages right now of hopping that thing up and giving that, built engine the power that it deserves. What would be possible out of that engine is a good question. We're limited by frame size on the turbo and location and stuff like that. So the most power we've made so far is 1,300 horsepower. With that engine, it's capable of handling that. Can we get that big of a turbo on there? I'm sure we can. Probably not a stock frame turbo. We'd have to do something. We could, sky's the limit. We're going to find that out eventually. But I think what he's going to do is a bolt-on turbo, so I wouldn't discount us being able to make maybe 800 wheel horsepower on that car.
The journey continues. This isn't over yet because we still have to make it to Jay Leno's garage. So on Tuesday morning, we got this car loaded up and we started heading west. So it was me, Stan, and Freddie, and I had a nice road trip. We didn't stress ourselves. It wasn't a cannonball. Thankfully, we were able to stretch it out over a couple days. And we actually got to Jay's the afternoon before we had to do the filming, and We stopped in to drop off the car at his garage and met David Swift, the producer of the show, and he kind of gave us a tour of the whole facility. So this is 140,000 square feet of just Jay's long acquired collection. Like, I think he's got 200 motorcycles and 150 cars or something crazy. He's showing us all around the facility and kind of giving us a lay of the land. They shoot 2 cars a day. They were going to shoot the Pininfarina guys with the 2,000 horsepower electric crazy hypercar thing in the morning, and then we were going to be there second. And he said, just come in whenever you want. We'll have lunch with Jay. It'll be a nice day. And we were walking through the repair facility, and there's Jay. He's just over at a table reading a magazine, and he sees Freddie and makes a beeline over to us. And it was so cool to meet Jay because Jay was fangirling Freddie. Oh, Freddie, what are you on episode 7 now, the P1? I just watched it. Man, that's crazy. I love my P1. It's so cool to see what it's like on the inside. I can't believe what you're doing. I'm such a big fan. Jay is such a genuine car guy. Everything that you see about him, on TV, on YouTube and stuff, that is how he is. He just loves cars. And seeing his collection is crazy. One of the coolest cars I saw there is he has a mint Yugo. I mean, he's got F1, his P1, Ford GT, but then he's just got weird things like a CTSV coupe or a Volkswagen Beetle. He just loves the mechanics of all different kind of cars. He's clearly not just a supercar guy. He loves all cars. So on filming day, we just got to run around his shop anywhere. The only thing they asked is you can take pictures and video. It's just don't cover the whole thing. A lot of the neatest stuff that's at his place is not even actually the cars, it's all the memorabilia and just things that he's collected. He's got a Ford modular motor that's cut in half that he got from Ford, and just all of this great memorabilia. But the one car, when we were talking to him at lunch, I'm like, Jay, my favorite car of yours is the Shogun. It's a rear engine Ford Festiva with a Taurus SHO engine with nitrous. They built 7 of them, and Jay had the first one. I remember seeing that car as a kid. He's like, oh, okay, yeah, no, it's in that back room behind where we shoot. He's like, just go back there, and check it out. So I got to see that, this SHO powered Festiva, and then next to that he had a mint GMC Cyclone. Man, this collection was just out of this world. But now it's our turn to have Jay test out the 675 and shoot with Freddie. So we got to witness all of that, and it went absolutely smooth. This car had 30 miles on it. We were really worried because, it's our reputation's on the line. Usually things fail at the worst possible time, but everything went absolutely flawless. Jay loved the car. The car made 675 wheel horsepower and 675 pound-feet of torque, but because we had a built engine in this car, we were able to ramp in the torque really down low. So the car absolutely ripped. Jay loved it, and Freddie was out with Jay, and he's like, man, Jay gets after it. He's not pussyfooting around. He gave it the beans and absolutely loved the car. So it was a great opportunity for Freddie. It was a great opportunity for us to kind of get our name out there, and especially with our newer engine program. But overall, it was a great experience and just an absolute once in a lifetime chance to meet Jay and hang out with Freddie. So it was great.
Successful car purchasing is all about knowing your buying power and being able to move quickly, and the best way to do that is getting pre-qualified with Premier Financial Services. Call one of these numbers, speak to one of their representatives, fill out their application, and then you'll know exactly how much car you can buy. You'll approach a seller, tell them you're already qualified, you've got your simple lease set up from Premier Financial, and you'll be able to close very, very quickly. That's why Premier is one of the most powerful partners in the world of exotic car financing, and that's why I turn to them every time I go out and try to buy something crazy.